Grab a pallet and turn it into something you'll be excited to have on your front porch this winter. I cut the edges with a cordless chainsaw, used a hammer to remove each piece of wood from the center, and then I pulled all the nails. I placed 4 boards together and drew the outline of a snowman. I roughly divided the board into 4 sections and made the bottom a bit bigger, going smaller as I moved my way towards the top. I cut the design out with a jigsaw, being careful to always cut away from myself. I cut an extra piece for the hat and 2 extra pieces for supports on the back. I quickly sanded everything. I secured everything together with a brad nailer and wood glue. I made a whitewash with white exterior paint and water and brushed it onto the snow part of the snowman. I wiped the extra paint off with a clean rag and then repeated the same process for the hat using black acrylic paint watered down. I added the bottom piece of the hat and secured it with wood glue and a brad nailer from both the front and back sides. I set it aside to dry and cut 9 rounds from a wood dowel, sanded the edges, painted them with the same black. Once dry, I attached them using hot glue, and then I cut a triangle shape with some scrap wood, painted it orange using an acrylic paint marker and paintbrush with water. I cut a piece of felt for the scarf, and now I've got a pair of snowmen that will stay alive all season long. I hope this inspired you to create your own long-lasting snowman out of pallets. Grab a sheet of plywood. First, I made a DIY projector from a cardboard box. Using a cell phone light, I projected the image and traced the shape of the tree, and then used a jigsaw to cut out all the details. To make a star, I drilled a hole with 1.5 or 1.25 inch drill bit. I cut the points of the star out using the jigsaw. I swept it, wiped it clean, and painted it with exterior white latex paint. I cut a scrap 2x4 into a point at the end and then screwed it down the center of the tree with 1 to 2 feet sticking out the bottom. Then I used a staple gun to attach white outdoor string lights to the back of the tree, and now you've got the best outdoor seasonal decor on your block. Bonus, it looks great during the day and the night. I hope this inspired you to create your own backlit seasonal decor.
This is no ordinary pallet project. What we're going to do, the first step, is we got to pull all these boards off. They're actually easier than it looks. All you got to do is give a little bit of pressure with a crowbar, and these nails pop right out. We want to pull out the big ones and the small boards. First step, though, after that is to get 2 long 1x3 6-foot long boards. We're going to put these in an L pattern, but we need to put some glue down. That is perfect. It actually holds boards together better than nails. Once we get that glue down, we're going to put this in an L shape just like that, and then we're going to use a few nails to hold it in place. I use 1.5 inch nails. They're perfect and they go in just right. Once we get that all glued together, we're going to mark 12 inches from the bottom. That's going to be our starting place for our first board. Now I'm going to start with a wider board right here. We're going to set this across, and then we're going to alternate to a smaller board. Again, going after that to a wider board, from wide, small, alternating all the way up. Now, we're going to lay all these across, but these are not cut to the size we want. Once we get these laid out, what we want to do is mark at the base the 24 inches. That is going to be our first cut, but we're going to lay a straight board across at an angle from the 24 inches up to the top, and then we're going to mark it all the way across. What this does is this gives us a perfect angle to make our pallet Christmas tree. Once we get it marked out, we're going to put it over to 22.5 degrees, which happens to follow the marks all the way up. Once we cut these, we're going to cut that first one. Now remember, every cut we do, we need to make a duplicate because we're going to do 2 sides of the tree. Starting back at the bottom one again, we're going to use the brad nails and put it into place. Doesn't take much, just put them in there. Now we need to space it. I used my pencil as a spacer and it worked perfect. We don't want to just bunch them up right next to each other. Once we get the first row done, we need to flip it over to make it easy. Take that, it's really light because that pallet wood is not that heavy, and we're going to lay it across the table. Again, I'm going to use a clamp on this side just to hold it in place, and then we're going to line up the boards with the first set we put in. This goes much faster on the second row than the first row because the first row is what is like our template and holds it in place. Once we get these all brad nailed down, just like we did with the first ones, we are going to take a drill bit and randomly just put drill bits and holes all across the pallet tree. Once we get these random holes just put all inside there, we're going to grab us some white or colored lights. It's a preference. Make sure you get the ones that can plug in from the back though, just in case you run out of room. Take those lights and you're going to staple them down. Now be careful with the staples. You want to make sure that you don't go through the wires. Now remember those holes that we drilled? Stick the light right through there. And again, use the staples to hold them in place. We're going to go up and around and all around our pallet Christmas tree. Now we're going to put it in place on that boring corner in the house, and look at this. We're going to light it up and watch just that magic come alive. Wasn't it great to be able to upcycle some pallets and make it into a Christmas tree and turn that boring corner into a work of art?
I grabbed a pallet to get my porch ready for Halloween. I used my battery chainsaw to easily cut the edges of the pallet boards. I used a hammer to bang the boards off and then removed the nails. I lined the boards up and used one vertically to create an even space between each board. I drew a pumpkin shape over 4 of the boards and then carefully marked the back of each board so I knew which way was up and which order they went in. I also marked 2 boards to put on the back lengthwise. I sanded the front and edges of each board with 150 grit sandpaper, just enough to reduce slivers. I diluted orange spice-colored acrylic paint with water and painted the sanded surfaces on each board, then immediately wiped the extra paint off with a clean cotton rag. I also painted the back 2 boards. Then I flipped them over with the back side up and spaced them on a flat surface in order, using that 1 extra board as a spacer again. I placed the 2 back pieces on vertically, making sure that all the wood boards were touching it. I used 3/4 inch nails in my 18 gauge brad nailer and secured the boards together, nailing from the backside. I drew out a stem, cut it with my jigsaw, sanded and painted it with watered down woodland brown colored acrylic paint. I wiped the extra off with a rag the same way I did the orange. I used a pencil to draw a face and painted it with black acrylic paint. And now I have 2 super cute jack-o'-lanterns that will never blow out. I hope this inspired you to create your own pallet jack-o'-lantern or pumpkins. I grabbed a free pallet for this genius garden hack. I used a hammer to remove some of the boards carefully. I left the nails in the boards so that I could use them again. I made 3 rows with 3 boards tight together on the bottom row, 2 boards together in the middle, and 2 boards near the top. The pallet was taller than I wanted, so I used a reciprocating saw to cut the extra off. I flipped the pallet over and followed the same pattern with 3 boards together on the bottom, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the top. I used all the leftover boards from this pallet, plus a couple extra scrap 1x4s. I cut more 1x4s to fill in the bottom of each section and secured it with 3 nails on the front, and then I flipped it over and I hammered in 3 nails on the back side. I gave the front a quick sand with 120 grit sandpaper using my palm sander. Next, I filled each section with soil and planted my favorite herbs. I used my Cricut to print stencils to paint labels for each section. When applying the stencil, I first sealed it with Mod Podge and then I let it dry before painting with acrylic paint. Once the paint was near dry, I removed the vinyl and did some touch-ups with my black acrylic paint pen. And now I have the most beautiful herb garden that can also be hung on the wall. I hope this inspired you to create your own pallet herb garden. Thanks for watching Home Talk and see you next time.